Trent Cotney and John Kenney are dedicated to helping the construction industry with legal business and safety challenges. Welcome to this week's episode of Law and Mortar.
Hey, it's Trent Cotney. I'd like to welcome everybody to another episode of Law and Mortar. As always, I got John Kenney here with me. John, how are you doing?
Great. As always, it's fantastic to be here. Another great week.
Yes, it's been busy. We've been talking about a lot of things that have been happening out there, both domestic and foreign, that contractors are having to deal with. And you mentioned something right before we got on that I think we should probably open with, and that is the continued pressures that contractors are seeing as a result of increased oil prices. You're seeing it in fuel that impacts fleet and shipping and trucking, all that kind of stuff. But you're also starting to see it in materials. What are you hearing on your end?
Yeah, prices have been continually going up. I just did a pretty deep dive on all the stats because they're all over the place. We got like three economies going at one time. But
Mhm.
bottom line, how does it affect our contractor base? Definitely fuel surcharges continue to go up, the cost of getting things there. And I know we're going to touch on some other things here in a little bit, but definitely some of the rumblings I've been hearing through the manufacturing front end is that the chemicals now, any kind of raw materials. Because when you look at it, Trent, as you and I both know, almost 90% of everything is made somehow a derivative of petroleum. There's some other mixes that go in there, but bottom line, petroleum's kind of king when it comes to it. And I'm hitting nothing about shortages. I don't really buy into that theory of shortages, but I do buy into the theory that prices are going to continue to not decline, not stay level, but increase at, I think, a moderate pace. I haven't heard anything about super spikes, but I think prices are going to continue to rise between 3 and 4% over the next few quarters.
Yeah, and there's one truth out there when it comes to pricing, and that is prices always go up, they don't ever go down. So even if miraculously everything stops tomorrow, you can anticipate that the prices are going to stay where they're at, if
I
not
think that's
continue.
why they call it as the rocket feather theory, right? They go up like a rocket and they come down like a feather.
There you go. That's it right there. So, staying on the topic of pricing, we're right now, as we speak, we're about 5 days away from the recent tariffs that were assessed on certain Canadian products. This is a 50% tariff. It was done, the stated reason it was done was for treatment of U.S. origin cars, but it does impact some construction and roofing materials. And the one that I saw in particular was cement. That's one of the ones that's affected. There's some paints, some varnishes, some wood products. It doesn't affect all construction products because if you are already under what's called like a Section 232 tariff, steel, aluminum, stuff like that, it doesn't affect that. But that could affect, a lot of things that go into your systems, your building envelope type work, and that's a hefty increase. So, of course, you never know till you get there. A lot of this is done for negotiating purposes. There may be some kind of resolution, on the eve, but as it stands now, this is something that contractors have to be concerned about, right, John?
Well, yeah, and you talk about like concrete. I know I've heard a lot of roofing contractors and other subcontractors say, "Well, I don't use concrete," but you can't look at it that way. What you got to look at is concrete goes into most all your foundations, your footings, your slabs, your walls, you name it, it's got concrete. And if concrete goes up too much, I think it's gonna affect the progress of future or even in progress construction. It could not necessarily cancel anything, but the biggest problem is delays. Delays are hard to, as I know as a roofing contractor when I was in there, I could have a $20 million backlog, but it's a matter of what's my executable backlog. You can have backlog kick off for months at a time, but you may have holes in your schedule because of it. So I think that's a big concern where these tariffs, we need to look at them that way as a contractor. Where's it going to create holes for me coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I haven't said it a dozen times on this podcast, I'd be surprised. But, make sure you're protecting yourself contractually. Have that price acceleration provision in your contract that accounts for, not just tariffs, but any, unknown thing that affects your material pricing. Make sure that you're bidding properly and you're taking into account, long schedule projects because there's a lot of uncertainty out there. It's hard to price it, whether it's labor uncertainty caused by, immigration or other things like that, or, tariffs, oil prices, all these different things that contractors have to take into account. So just be careful, especially if you're doing commercial or long-term residential. It's something that you got to kind of pay attention to.
Yeah, one
Um,
thing before you go on, I just want to jump off of one thing you said, Trent, about the contractual protection. I've had a lot of feedback in the last few months that says, well, I can't get that in my contract. And if I go to get in there, I'm not going to get the job. And I would just like to share my answer with everyone on this podcast. I said, if you take a job where you can't get anything to your advantage that you need to help protect yourself, put a big red star on it now, because that's going to be the project A, you're not going to get paid on. B, you're going to lose your shirt on, or C, you're going to litigation. It's one of the three. So you already know that's not an excuse to say, well, I can't. You're going to find work out there that is reasonably within your wheelhouse, but that is not a proper excuse. And I know you know it because especially on the litigation side, that's where your phone rings off the hook.
yeah, sage advice, my friend. It's the customers and projects that you don't take that make you successful. So, do your due diligence up front, recognize that if there are red flags, that those don't turn into green anytime soon. You need to take it into account before you submit that bid or proposal. John, we got some exciting news on your end. I know you've got some in-person training. I know you're always on the road doing, various training sessions, but you got your own. A lot of success in this last few years, sold out crowds. Why don't you kind of tee it up and tell us what you got going on?
Sure. So a lot of people see me running through the different manufacturers in different areas out on the road in multiple states, which as we were just talking about, I'm getting ready to start doing that. But in November, I finally got one scheduled this year. It's been that busy of a year, thankfully. I'm doing another advanced estimating workshop here in Lakeland, Florida, and you can get all the information off of my site. The nice thing about that is we already put it up live. I put it up live yesterday, and I've already got close to a third of the seats sold out. So what's great about that for anybody, if you've seen any of the other training I'm doing, this is where it all comes together, especially on the commercial side only. We're going to run through bids and estimates and how to do them and how to price them and understand it. This is where you get to do all the hands-on for 2 days. So I've done about four of these in the last couple of years. They're always very successful. And I always try to make them, as you know, Trent, I'm like you, we're perfectionists. We always try to make the next one just a little bit better than the one prior. So I'm excited. It's going to be November 17th and November 18th.
All right, mark it on your calendar. I've had the pleasure of being able to sit in many of your classes, and I could tell our audience, this is not just for estimators. I think if you're C-suite, if you're in sales, there's so much that you can gain just from understanding the process. And,
Yep.
being a layperson myself, just sitting there and having a better understanding of what actually goes into a bid or an estimate, I think is critical. It helps you do your job better, regardless of what you're doing in operations. So encourage
Yep, you're
everyone.
correct.
Yeah, it's by far, and obviously I'm biased a little bit, but by far the best estimating, honestly, best operations course I've had the ability to kind of sit through. So really recommend it for anybody that's out there. It's a great opportunity if you can't see John in person on the road. So John, we've talked about a few things here, but I've got a question that I thought was on point, and this kind of dovetails perfectly into what we were just talking about. So this question is from Mike. Mike is a commercial roofer, and Mike says here that he's a loyal listener to our show, and he has a specific question for you. He wants to know, if you had maybe a couple of things that you would advise any commercial estimator to really pay attention to, what would that be? And, he's saying that he's done it over the years. He's learned things, and he's kind of lamenting the fact that people are turning more towards AI and don't know how to do it, for lack of a better word, manually now. But, what would you recommend? What would be some advice you would give anybody that's a commercial estimator?
So since we had the AI in there, that's a perfect segue in. I think AI is a great tool that can be used very successfully as an estimators in their toolbox, like other things. I think it's fantastic for organizing specifications and documents and giving you summaries, provided you ask it the questions you would ask yourself. That's where the big key is. You just can't throw something in there and say, "Tell me what I should look for." You're going to get, Lord only knows what you're going to end up with. But as far as the estimating side, I have yet to see where you're going to be able to take any sort of estimate and put it in any kind of take anything and just load it into AI and it's going to spit you out an answer. One is there is at least 15 variables minimum on every single job that gets bet, and I'm saying minimum. Some of the more complicated can have 30. And as a seasoned estimator will tell you, that's what's up here. That's in your head. Those are the kind of things you can use AI to assist, but you've got to ask the questions, you got to verify. I think now in the general tone you said about things to look for today, I think the biggest problems I'm seeing estimators get into problem with starts right at the spec review. And it also comes when they're going out and specking their own re-roofs. They're getting into trouble by not taking a lot of risk awareness within account when they're starting to work on your estimate. Most people think the biggest mistakes in estimating are math. I could tell you math actually accounts for less than 7% of the overall mistakes that cost money to a company in estimating. It is everything else that's done wrong along the process.
Yeah, and you made a good point about AI. I have yet to see AI understand the full picture, regardless of whether it's estimating operations or legal. There, the it's a holistic approach, right? You see the entire field, and AI can't do that. It's a useful tool. It can help supplement. It can help, get you maybe 75%, 80% of the way there. But you've got to trust but verify. That's the key. Is it can't see the blind spots. That's the how I would describe it. So I
Yep.
thought that was I think you made some great points there. Last thing I'll mention, John, is football season's upon us. We got a
Finally.
preseason game tonight, which normally I don't watch preseason, but I missed it so much. I'm going to watch it. Tell me your thoughts on NFL this year. Who are you looking forward to seeing? What do you think's going to happen?
Oh man, I'll tell you what, I'm never really good on projections on that because I put too much heart into it. I'm still a fan on the backside. Have teams like to fall. But I can say from what I've been watching on the early preseason side, there is a tremendous amount of young talent that has entered into the NFL. And I don't mean just came in during a draft. I mean, look at that 2 and 3 year in the NFL area. There are so many people that have been developed. So I think you're going to see some surprise teams this year, and I don't know who they are at this point, but I think you're going to sit at the end of the season and say, wow, where did they come from? Because there's a lot of good people out there. And then, of course, it all comes down to what? Anything else? Risk, injury. So if they stay healthy, it'll be good. But I think it's going to be an exciting season. I always look forward to football. I'm like you. I'm ready to go, man. I'm ready.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell you, it's been fun watching these games because a lot of these stars, as we were coming out of the draft, I was like, man, I don't know, can these players really make it in the big leagues? So far, there's a handful of both quarterbacks and running backs that I've seen, even receivers that have done just really tremendous plays. So it's going to be exciting to watch. Of course, being from Jacksonville, I got to root for the Jags, and now my
Always.
current the Bucks. I got to be a Bucks fan, and then my home away from home, the Bears. That's probably my third team. But I love football. I love watching all of it. Looking forward to both college and pro stuff coming up. So, John, we've reached the end of another episode of Law and Mortar. As always, we appreciate our loyal listeners. If you want to reach out to me, you can email me at trent.cotney@arlaw.com or hit me anywhere on social at Trent Cotney. John, how can they get you?
You get me email as well at jkenny@cotneyconsulting.com, or you can get me on social media at jkenny. So always looking forward to hearing from our people.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys, and stay tuned for another episode of Law and Mortar. Go Bucks.
Now, take care.